Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robum, joined as always by my co-host, Jacob Hare. And we sit here tonight just under 24 hours away from the first selection of the NFL draft, which will be tomorrow in Cleveland, Ohio. A lot of excitement surrounding this draft, a lot of uncertainties with the first round tomorrow night, a lot of certainties as well. One thing we do know, there will be a lot of quarterbacks taken early. There will be a few wide receivers taken early. And we'll see what else happens, but let's get right into it. The first three picks, we almost guaranteed that they're going to be quarterbacks. The first two for sure. Third one, San Francisco, definitely as well. But then when we get to four, Atlanta, they have a few options. One name has been talked about a ton is Kyle Pitts out of Florida. Tight end, so much hype around him. People think he can be a game changer. They also could go quarterback. I want to hear what you think about that pick. It's really where the draft will begin because we sort of know what the three teams at the top are already going to do.
All right, so first of all, I'm freaking pumped for this draft. It's going to be so much fun tomorrow night. I can't wait. And before you get the draft, you get the mock draft. So let me give you my mock number 4. If I'm the Atlanta Falcons general manager, if Kyle Pitts is there at 4, which many believe he will be, I'm sprinting that pick to Roger Goodell. Kyle Pitts in man coverage, nobody can guard him. He's on his own island, basically. And Kyle Pitts' body control, if you watch him closely, is out of this world, and he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, and he's going to make an NFL fan base really happy. So I think they go Pitts at 4. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I think they will go Pitts, especially with some talk about them shopping Julio Jones this week, maybe for a trade. They have a bit of a cap crisis going on there. Getting rid of Julio Jones would certainly free up some money, and there definitely would be a ton of teams interested in him. He's had injury problems, but he's still a top wide receiver in this league, no matter what's happened over the past season or two. And then after that, Cincinnati, there's some questions around what they could do. A lot of people like Penei Sewell going to Cincinnati. A lot of people like Jamar Chase. And then the Dolphins, it almost seems like they're definitely going to take a wide receiver at that pick. And if Jamar Chase is there, a lot of people think that's the pick. And if not, people think Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, maybe, but it seems like he's going to go a little bit later in the first round, maybe in the 8, 9, 10 range, maybe to 12 to Philadelphia. What do you think happens with those three wide receivers?
Okay. So a lot of people are saying that they want to reunite Chase with Burrow, but if you saw that picture the other day of Burrow sitting in that throne with his new Bengals jersey, you saw a noticeable scar on his leg. And that was because they did not have an offensive line last year to protect Burrow, and it caused him to tear his ACL. This year, the Bengals GM needs to go into the draft and prioritize O-line over everything, because I don't care if you have Jamar Chase on the field with Joe Burrow. If you don't have an offensive line, he won't have time to throw to Jamar Chase. So I think at 5, the Bengals go Sewell. And you asked me about the 3 wide receivers. I have Chase going number 6 to the Dolphins. I think I'm not a Tua fan at all. I didn't like what he showed me this year. I mean, obviously there's room to improve. And the first step is getting him a real wide receiver 1, because Devontae Parker is solid. They signed Will Fuller, but Jamar Chase is on a new level. And then with Jalen Waddle, I have him going 12 to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, last year they picked Jalen Reagor at 21. Reagor did not have a good rookie season. He couldn't create separation. I'm not a fan of the pick. I think that Reagor won't be on the team in a few years just because I don't see any potential from him. I hope he proves me wrong because I'm a lifelong Eagles fan, but I do not see anything. And everything that Jalen Reagor does, Waddle does it infinity times better. So I think that Howie Roseman makes up for his mistakes and picks Jalen Waddle at 12. And Devontae Smith, I mean, I have him dropping to 15 at New England. Look, Devontae Smith, 23 touchdowns last year, the most electrifying college football player we've seen in a while. I mean, he won the Heisman as a wide receiver. That's unheard of. So I think that, New England might trade up for a quarterback, but if they stay pat at 15, Devontae Smith is the right pick, and they'll get weapons for Cam this year. I don't know what the hell they're going to do at quarterback after this season if they don't trade up tomorrow night, but Devontae Smith would make Cam Newton really happy.
Yeah, you mentioned Devontae Smith possibly to New England. I think New England takes a different route. I do think they will trade up. Not sure exactly where. Detroit certainly is discussed possibly trading back. The Carolina Panthers also another team. I think that New England will ultimately make that move up. I think that they're going to select a quarterback when they do that, or I know for a fact that they will select a quarterback if they do that. And I think if Justin Fields is there, I think that's who they'll take. As far as Devontae Smith goes, how you were talking about him earlier, I think that he'll end up going to Philadelphia at 12. I think if the Lions stay put at 7, I think that that's where Waddle will end up. I know they need some offensive linemen, but wide receiver with Kenny Golladay leaving is also a huge necessity there for their new quarterback, Jared Goff, coming in. And I think that once you get through there, Giants, maybe they'll snag Smith or Waddle if he falls. But I think that Smith will ultimately end up being there for the Eagles at 12, and I think they'll take the opportunity to pounce on him.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the Lions picking a wide receiver at 7. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Lions picking a wide receiver because every year it feels like the Lions are picking in the top 10 of the draft. I mean, it almost feels for the last decade, basically. And for them, I think the smartest move for the Lions would be to draft Rashawn Slater because they need to build up that O-line for Jared Goff. Jared Goff's a quarterback who's won many NFL games, and he's won big NFL games. He took the Rams to the Super Bowl, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And if you can get Jared Goff a solid O-line, you could be a decent team. I'm not saying playoffs by any means possible because I get he had the press conference, but I'm not a Dan Campbell fan. I don't think he's meant to coach in the NFL. And if you pick Slater, that you're building up a good O-line in Detroit because you got some guys last year. They have a phenomenal center in Frank Ragnow, and they have some other guys in that line that could piece together for Jared Goff.
Yeah, I think Detroit is certainly an intriguing team to look at going into this season. No, I don't think they'll be very good, but I think that if they bring in a nice receiver, a nice weapon for Goff, maybe it'll help them out in winning a few games. But I think that
In the second round, I like
top 10 this year, and I think they'll definitely be picking the top 10 next year.
for sure. I mean, second round, I like wide receiver for Goff. This year, if Slater's open, or even if, I mean, they picked Okuda first round last year, but even if maybe Surtain at 7 would be a great pick for them because Patrick Surtain is the best. He's the most complete quarterback that we've seen in a while. He's better than Okuda last year. And if you put Okuda into this draft after seeing what he did in the NFL this year, he'd be the third best corner after Surtain and Horn. So that's just my take on that. And by the way, to all our viewers out there, our mock drafts are what we think is going to happen, not what we want to happen. Just got to make that clear.
Yeah, I mentioned Devontae Smith to the Eagles. Of course, you all know I'm a big Eagles fan, but I think that is what will actually happen, and also that is what I want to happen.
You got the Homer hat on for that pick? Is that what's going on right now? All right, settled. Okay, but we talked about the quarterbacks in this draft. So, Earl, I want you to rank these 5 quarterbacks for me. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones.
Number 1, I mean, it's obvious. There's no other choice than Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, I do think it is actually Zach Wilson. Okay. 3, though, you might disagree with me here, but I got Justin Fields. I love him out of Ohio State. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in this league. I'm a big fan of his. Mac Jones, I think at 4, he is the 4th best QB prospect. I think that him and Trey Lance, they're close, but I think Mac playing at Alabama, playing against that competition, I think he's a little more prepared for this draft. I think Trey Lance still has a lot to prove. Mac Jones has already proved himself at the college level, of course, winning the national championship last year. And I think that he'll be ready to face the competition that he sees in the NFL. Trey Lance will have to see if he can prove himself.
There's nothing in the world that makes me more mad when people rank Justin Fields ahead of Trey Lance and Mac Jones. I get maybe rank Justin Fields at 4 ahead of one of them, but to rank him in front of both of them, oh my God. Let me go on my little Justin Fields rant here. Justin Fields is a quarterback. I have nothing against transferring, but while he was at Georgia, he couldn't even beat out Jake Fromm for the starting job. But on the other hand, our friend Mac Jones stayed his course at Alabama, believed in himself, had the competitive spirit that you want in your quarterback, stayed at Alabama, eventually got the starting job when Hurts and Tagovailoa were out of Tuscaloosa. But Mac Jones is a quarterback. He's the most pro-ready quarterback. I like that you added that point in. He's going to be a guy that comes in. People want to play for him. I mean, if you remember at his pro day, he got Devonta Smith, wasn't going to participate until Mac convinced him to help him out. Mac just seems like the guy that you want to play for. And with Justin Fields, I mean, Dan Orlovsky of ESPN questioned his work ethic, and that's something that concerns me a lot because if your quarterback does not want to put in the work to be great in the NFL, there's no even point in talking about it because they're not going to be great if you're not putting in the work. So Justin Fields also showed so much inconsistency this year. Pat Fitzgerald defense at Northwestern, they demolished him. He didn't look good in that Big Ten championship game. He barely snuck by. He needed his running back to rush for 300 yards to win that game. So at the next level, I don't see Justin Fields succeeding. And I'm telling you right now, Justin Fields is a bust.
You mentioned that Northwestern game, but what about the next game? It's pretty
Yeah,
easy to talk about
he
the
beat up
bad
a
game,
crappy
but
Clemson defense. I'll give him credit.
why not talk about the good games too?
What about that championship game? You don't look too good there. That Clemson game, sure as hell he did look good, but is there anyone on Clemson's defense that's going to the NFL this year? No. Do I see Clemson as an elite defense? No. Their quarterback is maybe the greatest college football quarterback in the last 20 years, or prospect, to play. He carried them the whole season. Their defense didn't need to do anything except get a few stops every game. So I'm a Justin Fields hater. And hate me if you want for hating Justin Fields, but I don't like him.
Yeah, I mean, I already said it. I disagree with you on that. I think he'll be really good in the NFL. But moving on, running backs. Not really any prospect that jumps out to you in this draft. Certainly not in the first round. But there are some names thrown around like Najee Harris out of Alabama. Do you see a running back going later in this first round, maybe to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers that just lost their running back, James Conner?
Yeah, I actually do. You make a good point about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do see Najee Harris going to the Pittsburgh Steelers because if you know the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're like hard mouth running football. And last season they didn't have that with any of the running backs. Benny Snell struggled. James Conner was always hurt. He couldn't stay on the field. Their late round pick from last year, Anthony McFarland, showed nothing. So I think Mike Tomlin's going to go into the front office and tell them to get Najee Harris because Najee Harris is a dude that plays hard-nosed football, and that's Steelers football, and it's always been that way. So I do think Najee goes first round. And if you saw yesterday that Ian Rappaport reported that Javonte Williams is a name that's gaining steam, I think he could potentially go to the Bills at 30 or maybe even ETN at 30 because I believe the Bills are taking a running back first round, and it's just a matter of the two of them. What do you think about the first round running backs?
Yeah, I certainly agree about Najee Harris to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Steelers are a very complete team. They brought back Juju Smith-Schuster, which I think was key for them because without Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson's still there. Claypool, of course, they have a very good wide receiver corps, but Juju really makes it a heck of a lot better. And I think that their O-line is good. Their quarterback, we'll see how Big Ben does. He was solid through the first 11 or so games last year, and then at the end, they really struggled, and he struggled as well. I think that defense is very good, and I think that that's certainly not at all an area of concern for that team. Running back, though, certainly Najee Harris could come in and provide a spark, assisting Big Ben, and they could try to lean on that run game a little bit more. Certainly the pass game didn't work for them down the stretch. Maybe if they bring in a solid running back, the run game will. And Big Ben, not sure how much time he has left there, so this could sort of help them with that, maybe a transitional period that's coming up for the Steelers.
100%. And you mentioned that defense. I mean, if you add a complacent offense in Pittsburgh, they could, but I don't think they're going to win the division because I have the Browns running away with that division because I absolutely love what Andrew Berry did this offseason. But if you think about it, just add a complacent offense in Pittsburgh and you got a solid team, maybe even a wild card team. So I think that's the move they need to make. But moving on to our next segment, it's our newest segment, and it's called Jacob Hare Sleepers because I've been researching sleepers for this podcast, and I came up with two names who are going to be NFL studs. And you guys can come back, watch the podcast, comment that we were right. And we worked hard on these two guys. My first sleeper is none other than running back from North Carolina, and his name is not Javonte Williams. It's his other running back duo from last year, Michael Carter. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael Carter. Michael Carter, he's a smaller running back, which may concern NFL GMs, but his cuts are some of the most explosive cuts I've seen from a college running back in a while. I mean, if you watch the Senior Bowl, you saw that he was running the ball really well, and he surprised a lot of people by having a great senior day. And he's a smaller guy, as I mentioned, but he's a bulldozer when he runs, and he reminds me a little bit of a Kareem Hunt. And his counterpart, Javonte Williams, is the Nick Chubb. So I compared that duo to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I don't know how many people are watching UNC football. Maybe our friend Jordan Becker was last year. But that's a guy that is going to succeed on the next level. And don't let his height scare you because he runs like a crazy man on that NFL field. And our next prospect that I have as a sleeper, his name is Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. You may be wondering, yeah, I've seen his name in mock drafts, first round, past couple days. But who the hell is this guy? Well, let me tell you about this guy. Tevin Jenkins is a grown-ass man. He is going to throw edge rushers onto the ground. And with Tevin Jenkins, he doesn't let anybody touch his body. His hands, if you watch his hands closely, he's blocking like his life depends on it because nobody's touching his quarterback. He is basically the perfect tackle that you want. And I really believe that he's going to succeed on the next level because Tevin Jenkins is a guy that he seems NFL ready if you watch his tape. And I watched a good amount of it, and I really, really like what I saw from Tevin Jenkins. Earl, you got any sleepers for me? I know.
Yeah, certainly one guy who I think has really flown under the radar. Maybe not a first round player, but Davis Mills out of Stanford, the quarterback. There's not been so much talk about him, but he certainly could sneak late into the first round. Maybe a team will trade back or trade into the late first round to get him. I think that he's a guy who played at Stanford out on the West Coast. Those games sometimes late at night. Not everyone watches him, doesn't get so much attention. But I think he's a guy that could sneak in there and really make an impact. I think he's under the radar. He has the talent. I think he could be a good player, whether he goes late first or in the second round at any point.
Yeah, so with
yeah.
Davis Mills, I mean, he is the NFL arm to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly, which I really liked when I watched his tape. Another thing that does worry me a little bit about him, but I think it could be fixed, or maybe it can't be fixed. I don't know. His decision-making was extremely poor last season, and, I mean, he's a really good coach in David Shaw from Stanford, and, I mean, we'll see if that gets fixed, but if that doesn't get fixed, I'm worried about him, but I think his arm can really carry him in the NFL, and that's a guy that I like going first round tomorrow night to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick 32. Bold take.
We'll see what happens. I'm not sure about Tampa Bay. I think maybe next year will be their draft to take a quarterback. We shall see. So talking about prospects that maybe you think are a little overhyped coming into this draft that you think, too much hype around them. First round picks, second round picks. Let me know.
All right, I'll give you a clue. He's a quarterback, transferred from Georgia, went to Ohio State. His last name rhymes with yields. His name is Justin Fields. He's a bust.
What's with all the Justin Fields slander?
I mean, did you watch that Northwestern game this season?
You keep bringing up that one game. I'll just come back and say, did you watch that Clemson game?
Did you watch that national championship? Did he impress you in the biggest stage of the college football season, Justin Fields? Like, I'm curious, did he impress you?
A lot of teams didn't have so much success against Alabama last year.
But Justin Fields is going to be playing against that talent in the NFL. Did he impress you? Answer the question.
He did not, but his whole team didn't impress me in the national championship game. It's not like it's a team sport.
Fair point.
And of course, the quarterback is the most important part of that team, but it's not all about the quarterback. The quarterback can make a huge impact, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how everyone plays around him. And if everyone around him doesn't do their job, it doesn't allow him to succeed. Like what about Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl? He got killed.
Clearly there was something. I mean, that O-line was dreadful to watch, but completely different circumstances. Patrick Mahomes was also playing with the hurt foot or the turf toe, and I mean, clearly it affected him in the game, but that's a completely different story. That's the big boys we're talking about, and then we're talking about college football. Justin Fields did not impress me in that final game. That really put the red flag on him for me. And another thing is, I've seen so many negative things about him in the past few months that I'm really saying, like, what good has come out of this situation that happened with him and Dan Orlovsky and the coach got involved? I mean, it happened last year with Tua. All these negative things about, oh, he's hurt, oh, this, that. And really, Tua wasn't good last year either. So clearly the scouts know a little more than I do. So I'm worried about Justin Fields. I'm truly worried about him.
I mean, we'll see. I think also you talk about Tua. You also are hating on him quite a bit. I think Tua was not good last year by any means, but he's a young quarterback. He was coming off of a big injury, and we'll see how he does in year two.
Tua proved me wrong. I'm not anti-Tua or anything. I just don't like his skill set. If Tua goes out, those 40 touchdowns next season, great for him, great for the Miami community, great for the Dolphins, but I don't see it happening. But you brought up a good point about Justin Fields in that you were talking earlier about that Clemson game. And let's talk about the other quarterback on the field whom he beat, Trevor Lawrence. What, in your mind, would make Trevor Lawrence a bust?
I think if he comes into Jacksonville and ultimately the team around him is just flat out awful, and the team like struggles in his first 3-4 years, he doesn't impress, he doesn't put up big numbers, throws lots of interceptions. I think that would certainly not bode well for him throughout his career. But I think if he comes into Jacksonville next year, first year, throws for 20 plus touchdowns, keeps his interception not too high, but also he's a rookie. He's gonna come in, he's gonna throw some interceptions. It happens. And I think that the expectations for Trevor Lawrence in year one in the Jacksonville Jaguars should not be through the roof. This is a team that is still not very good. And I know some people think Trevor Lawrence is going to burst onto the scene and instantly change that. I do not. I think that Trevor Lawrence, it'll take a year or two for them to get off and running. I think that he certainly will be the quarterback of the future for the Jacksonville Jaguars and will win them a lot of football games. And I don't think he'll be a bust. So this conversation is just all hypothetical. But I think that ultimately Lawrence needs to come in. He needs to make some impact to the best of his ability, even though the team around him won't be that great. And I think he'll have an exciting career. I'm really excited to watch this guy.
I mean, I don't remember the time that a prospect has been this hyped up in the NFL, maybe since Andrew Luck. Because, I mean, last year Joe Burrow only really showed us out for one season where he had the 60 touchdowns. But Trevor Lawrence has been in the spotlight since his senior year of high school. That's the first time I've ever heard of him. I said earlier in this podcast, but Trevor Lawrence could have came out as a freshman and being the consensus number one pick over Kyler Murray that season easily. I mean, you could make a case that he could have been a top 5 pick as a senior in high school. I mean, he's just been under the spotlight. And the one thing that I really love about Trevor Lawrence is he isn't cracked under the pressure. He's been under the microscope his whole life. And I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be unbelievable, top 5 quarterback for years to come. He'll win 2 Super Bowl rings, and I'm excited to watch Trevor. But we talked a little bit about Zach Wilson. Do you see Zach Wilson as the quarterback that the New York Jets should select? Because we know they will, but do you believe that it's the right pick?
I do think it's the right pick. I think down the stretch of BYU, he really proved himself. He elevated his game, and he showed that he is a legit quarterback prospect. I know that early in the season, he was maybe a mid-first round pick option, but was definitely going to go in the first round. And I think the fact that he rose that quickly up draft boards and sort of just played so well and played himself really into that number 2 pick, it's really impressive, and it shows how he's grown as a quarterback. And I think that growth will translate to the NFL for sure.
100%. And we talked about it earlier. Zach Wilson stays healthy. New York Jets, you have your quarterback of the future. I know you guys been through Sanchez, Pennington, Darnold, and many more, but
Geno Smith was there for a bit.
Geno Smith. But I'm telling you, Jets fans, this is the one. Count me on this one.
All right. So before we wrap up, I got to ask one last question. If you had to bet your house on a prospect not named Trevor Lawrence or Kyle Pitts, I'm not going to allow you to say either one of those making the Hall of Fame, who would it be and why?
Ooh, this is a tough question, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Micah Parsons. I mean, Penn State linebacker, opted out of the season last year. But when he played, he was the most dominant defensive player in college football. I mean, his stock's dropping a little bit just because of his maturity issues, but this kid gets on the field. He is an unbelievable talent. And Robam, I know you bleed Penn State. You know Micah Parsons better than anybody.
That's my
Tell me
guy.
a little bit more about him.
He is an incredible football player. Of course, he opted out last year, but he was an All-American the year before. He showed how good he was. He didn't need to play last season to keep his place up at the top of this NFL draft. I think he's going to be an incredible player. We'll see where he goes. A lot of speculation about maybe he'll go to the Cowboys, the Giants, or the Eagles, one of those 3 NFC East teams. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. I'm really excited for him to take off with his NFL career.
All right. I actually have one more question for you before we let you go, or before we wrap this up. Which GM is under the most pressure tomorrow night? This is always my favorite question to ask.
I mean, it's got to be Howie Roseman.
Oh, get your homer.
Howie Roseman, or even Joe Douglas in New York. He just traded away Sam Darnold. He's taking Zach Wilson, a prospect that maybe maybe people disagree that he should be up at number 2. It almost seemed like it was going to be Fields, Lawrence, and then from there, who else at 1 and 2? But we shall see. I think Joe Douglas under a lot of pressure. Zach Wilson is their guy, so we'll see what happens. I think the Jets have been longing for a quarterback to sort of lead that franchise out of the misery that they've been going through for the past 2 years. So I think Douglas under a lot of pressure. Howie Roseman, it seems like he's almost under a lot of pressure every year at the draft. We'll see what he does. It'll be interesting. I think that when you pick earlier in the draft, though, it's easier not to mess up because you almost are always going to get a good player. It just depends how that player pans out. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited for this draft and looking forward to it.
I gotta give my answer quickly. The team or the GM and coach who are under the most pressure tomorrow night, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. You trade up for your quarterback, and if you F this pick up, no one's gonna remember Kyle Shanahan for being there Matt Ryan's MVP season as the coordinator at Atlanta. No one's gonna remember him for being the mastermind behind Kirk Cousins' success in Washington. Everyone will remember him as the coach who picked the bust of the quarterback. So San Francisco, you can't screw this pick up because it will define both of your careers, even though you're 2 years removed from a NFC championship game and winning it and going to the Super Bowl and almost beating Patrick Mahomes. This pick is the most important pick of the draft for any team.
Yep. So with that being said, looking forward to tomorrow night. We'll see what happens, and stay tuned to the Jacob and Jacob podcast for some upcoming interviews in the coming weeks.
I'm pumped for tomorrow night, and I'm pumped for some upcoming interviews with us. And we won't name drop anyone, but stay tuned.